Good morning. It's Sunday, March 24th, 2019. We're starting off the show with a song by Cella called Romanticize. All right, welcome to the Sunday morning show. I am your host, Faceman, your friendly neighborhood contrarian. Oh, excuse me. Whoa. We did not sanction this next song. Okay. So the song we just played was Romanticized by Cella, amazing artist from Australia, who I had the pleasure of meeting. I think back in 2016, I saw her perform. I forgot where the hell she performed at, but it was a nice venue, and I'm surprised she hasn't come to perform again. I mean, you know, they had a good turnout and everything. You know, I know she had people show up for her and stuff. So I don't know. She needs to perform again because I love her music, and I don't know. Right now, she's doing a lot of local stuff in Australia and elsewhere. And I just want to see her come perform here in New York. She has great uplifting music. Let's see here. I'm just tweeting real quick to try to get some people to join the session today before we get into everything. So, I hope everybody had a good week today. Had a good week this week. My week was a little hazy, a little cloudy. Didn't really get a whole lot done. I need to step it up a little bit more. I went to a job interview. Hope I hear back from them. I really need some movement in that area. I had to take down a video of an interview. I need to edit that. My BS interview. And yeah, man. I need to be a little bit more productive. But here we are on the Sunday morning show. And we've got a lot of good topics to talk about today. The first story we have is about Venezuela and the continuing, deterioration of what's going on over there. We're going to talk a little bit about China, about the Yellow Vest movement, immigration, lots of fun stuff. We'll also talk about the Google Stadia. I'll save that for a little bit later, but it's a new platform that Google created for core gamers, or should I say to bring core gaming to casual gamers. So we'll get all into that, but first we got this video from the BBC titled Venezuela Crisis, There's Simply No Water.
Días sin agua, fines de semana sin agua, días de la semana sin agua, sin aviso, sin previo aviso. No porque se reventó una bomba, no porque hay un arreglo de tubería, no, o sea, no hay agua, no hay agua. Realmente uno al día a día no te das cuenta de lo que has ido perdiendo, no te das cuenta. Ha sido tan paso a paso que uno va como tapando y no te das cuenta. O sea, cuando te paras afuera y dices, ya va, perdí esto, y te das cuenta, ahí es que, Dios mío, he dejado de hacer miles y miles de cosas, he ido en caída y no me he dado cuenta. Pero yo sí creo que uno tiene que hacer las cosas bien. Yo sí creo que hay una esperanza. Yo sí creo que la gente está obstinada. Yo sí creo que si estamos juntos y nos apoyamos todos es como lo del agua ahorita, que la vecina tenía el carro, nosotros hicimos la cola y la otra no podía y nosotros cargamos. Yo sé que mañana o otro día, si nosotros no podemos, ella nos va a conseguir agua. Yo estoy segura de eso. Entonces, yo pienso que que la gente tiene que terminar de entender eso, es que sí podemos hacer las cosas.
Another week, another protest, but this time...
Yeah, so the situation in Venezuela is still deteriorating. They've got horrible conditions there. It's a really messed up situation. We covered it a lot, I believe last week or the week before that. We talked a little bit more about how Venezuela, had not diversified its economy, had been living under ruled by socialists, but also, socialists that mismanaged the country. But also, the United States has hit Venezuela with tons of sanctions and Citibank prevents them from taking loans and all this fun stuff. So who knows how that will get resolved? I think at this point, I think from what I gather, a lot of people in Venezuela want to get Maduro out, but also are skeptical of Guaido. Guaido is clearly a United States puppet, so they are right to not trust his intentions. And I really don't see anything happening in Venezuela until Maduro is taken from power, because he doesn't have the ability to maintain order and throughout all this stuff. Like eventually the military is gonna probably take over. They might take power from him, or maybe there's some kind of U.S. coup, and they work with the United States to install Guaido or some similar person. So, not to belabor the point, we've talked about that enough. It's just incredible, all the things that we hear coming from Venezuela, what people are doing to survive. Like, this lady is taking water from this mountain runoff water. I think I had read somewhere about, I don't want to say it if I'm not too sure, but yeah, wow, this is really nasty. Desperate Venezuelans swarm sewage drains in search of water. No, I don't want to. Don't you just hate this? All these sites, they pop up a video, even with ad blocker. I don't like those pop-up videos. Let's see. Okay, desperate Venezuelans swarm sewage drains in search of water, sewage, poop and stuff, poops and peeps, all that. Venezuela's 5-day power blackout left homes without water. Lilybeth Tejedor found herself looking for it on Monday in the last place she would have imagined, a drain pipe feeding into a river carrying sewage through the capital, Caracas. Tejedor, 28, joined dozens of people who had flocked to the Guare River, which snakes along the bottom of a sharp ravine alongside Caracas's main highway, to fill up a 4-gallon plastic container. Unlike the fetid liquid flowing through the Guare River, the water emerging from the pipe was at least clear. Those who gathered to collect it said the water had been released by local authorities from reservoirs. They added, however, it was being carried through unsanitary pipes and should only be used to flush toilets or scrub floors. I've never even seen this before. It's horrible, horrible, said Tejedor, preparing to carry the container on a small handcart back to her home in the neighborhood of San Agustin. Tejedor, who works at a computer technology store, has a 2-year-old daughter and takes care of 2 nieces. The ones that are most affected are the children, because how do you tell a child that there's no water? The lack of water has become one of the most excruciating side effects of the nationwide blackout that the government of President Nicolas Maduro has blamed on U.S.-backed sabotage, but his critics call the product of corruption. But the critics call this a product of corruption and incompetence. The blackout has worsened the situation of a country already facing a hyperinflationary economic collapse that has spurred a mass migration and turned once basic items like corn flour and toilet paper into unaffordable luxuries for most people. After 5 days without electricity to pump water, Venezuelans from working-class neighborhoods to upscale apartment towers are complaining of increasingly infrequent showers, unwashed dishes, and stinking toilets. Oh, gosh. And this is the same, is this the drain, or is this looks similar to, from the video when they were getting the runoff water. So is this the same thing? Damn, it was coming from a sewage drain? Caracas needs 20,000 liters of water per second from nearby watersheds to maintain service. Many worry about the spread of disease. Yes, the lack of water compounds the inability to buy soap due to soaring prices or chronic shortages. Oh my gosh. So it's just like, imagine not being able to just wash your hands when you need to, you know? You gotta like ration the water. And like this could easily happen if there was a blackout in New York City. If there were blackouts all over America, which could easily happen because the electrical grid is very vulnerable. It's one of our top existential threats. Which reminds me, I should do that video. I forgot all about that. And a lot of people are not really that aware about it. That an EMP explosion, and an EMP is basically when they detonate a nuclear warhead above the ground, like in the air, and that like in the ionosphere or something like that. I'm not sure how it works exactly. Maybe we'll look at that further another time. But it shuts down all electrical components. So even your car, even things on battery, whatever, you know, your lights in your house, everything gets shut down. And just imagine how difficult it would be to survive, especially at night in the dark, in the complete dark. Imagine you're in the middle of Brooklyn in complete darkness. Man, the gangs and the mafia would eat this place alive, and all kinds of other people, desperate people. So, you know, this really should be a lesson to all developed countries that, you know, when you've got these cities and stuff where you're cramming a bunch of people into a small area, that there needs to be some idea of, you know, a backup plan, some way for the city to sustain itself if that ever did happen. So that's about it. That's about it for as far as Venezuela right now. Let's continue on. RT News has this story: soldiers may be allowed to open fire if lives put at risk by yellow vests. The yellow vest protests going on in Europe right now, which is pretty much on media blackout here in the United States. I bet you could ask any random American about the yellow vest movement, and they probably would have no idea what the hell you're talking about. But it's been going on for, I don't know, a couple months now. It's just straight protests and, like, you know, people getting hurt, things getting vandalized all over France and a couple other parts of Europe, but mostly France is where the intense stuff is happening. I actually spoke to somebody from Germany a couple weeks ago, and she was saying that, yeah, it's mostly in France. That at least in Germany, they don't have any of those protests going on in Germany. So, but I do expect this to continue spreading, and I think United States is ripe for this kind of protest movement. Just like Occupy Wall Street really took over the narrative a lot, or you know they you know got on the news and you know were everywhere, like Occupy Tallahassee, like they were occupying everything, right? But the thing with Occupy Wall Street is that it was centered around communism, centered around socialism. It was really an anti-capitalist movement, and you know. So that's the thing. The yellow vest movement is more of a unified front. You've got leftists, you got leftists, rightists. You got people on the left, people on the right. You got moderate people coming together to protest the same thing: the policies of Macron, the globalist policies of Macron that you know benefit banks and corporations, but don't benefit the people.
Another week, another protest, but this time opening fire at crowds is apparently an option.
The orders of the soldiers are strictly set out, extremely precise. They have different modes of action to face all threats. It could go as far as opening fire if their or someone else's life is at threat.
This Saturday, over 5,000 armed soldiers will be in the streets. Parisians are divided over the prospect, with some calling it catastrophic.
I think this is an extreme measure. Obviously, this will not solve everything, but at least it will help to avoid further destruction.
I don't think anything good will come of the government's decision to use the army. As for what they did last Saturday, they burned down restaurants and so on. I think this is a necessary measure.
It's not the army's mission. It shows the failure of the government and the failure of our politicians.
I think if the army opens fire, it will prove that crisis management was not efficient. I think that bringing in the army is a way of responding to the crisis, but it's not a solution to the problem.
Politicians from across the political spectrum have reacted with anger to this latest measure.
It's a serious mistake. Imagine them standing in front of the National Assembly or the LSA Palace and hordes descend on them. What happens to them? Will they be fired on? Will people be killed?
In 2017, Emmanuel Macron promised to appease France. In 2019, he suggests that the military could shoot at demonstrators. Macronism is fracturing France and sending it into the abyss.
This time you have gone too far, Mr. Macron. You have to know how not to push the entire country into a settling of scores. It's time to return to more proportional methods. The whole world would be horrified to learn that here in France we are using the same methods that we condemn when they are used in other countries.
In addition to putting soldiers on the streets in order to prevent another wave of violence, the French president has decided to close several iconic landmarks, including this famous avenue, the Champs-Élysées. On Saturday, anyone protesting here will face a fine to up to 135 euros.
These announcements are not the result of powerlessness, but rather a public order response to this precise reality, a horde of hooligans.
Whoa, dang.
It
Bruh.
seems beefing up security on the streets is the only solution to this crisis that Emmanuel Macron can see, and he's now turning his attention to other challenges.
Today, Brexit for me is not a technical negotiation. It is a political lesson before anything else. We have to acknowledge that China has been playing on our divisions. I believe that when anyone brings their domestic problems or divisions to the European Council, it is a waste of time, and I don't have time to waste.
The 19th weekend of protests is now here. The French capital is braced for a fresh outpouring of anger, and the protesters have adopted the slogan, "The war has been declared."
What an asshole. And how is he blaming China? I don't know, bro. You need to, like, explain that shit a little further, because I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I'm sure China's in there, got its fingers in there somewhere or another, but this is a direct response to his policies, and which they don't agree with. And it's funny that he's just calling them a horde, a mob. The way he's framing this really shows the intent, and can kind of foreshadows what might happen soon enough. As this story indicates, that soldiers may be allowed to open fire on the people. Like, if that really I mean, a lot of people think that France is already in a civil war at the moment. So, I mean, if they start opening fire, then you're going to have a serious problem. I don't think it's too out of the question to see Macron call for martial law at some point. Because, like I said, these things have been going on these protests have been going on for a while, for weeks and weeks. I think it's been a couple months now. And it's getting out of control. He doesn't have any control. They just continue every day, and I don't know how they do that. Like, how the hell, how these people can afford to protest every day? But I don't know. I guess the social welfare and stuff. But Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And again, the mainstream American media doesn't talk about the Yellow Vest protests out in France. So here's some more. We've got from wearechange.org, Luke Radowski's interviews this guy from France who was involved heavily with the protests, organizing the protests, and so this video gives some inside perspective. It is an anonymous source, but I mean it sounds legit enough, I guess. Just keep a skeptical ear, I guess.
Yellow Vest movement began late last year when, of course, the mainstream media was not talking about it, and we were telling you this is something major. This is something that is going to continue on. This is something that's going to spur the European spring. And now, just after last week, after the 18th week of mass demonstrations, not just in Paris, all over France, we are seeing it go to one of its craziest, most insane points. To talk about this and a lot more, we have Bob. Bob is one of our official sources. He's anonymous because there's a lot of reprisals against the Yellow Vest movement because, again,
is this kind of funny that they put this image up, Bob?
Speaks for, and he does talk to a lot of the organizers. Dude? He is there on the ground. He is there in Paris. He knows a lot of people, and he has a lot of on-the-ground information that has been very solid and very good, and of course gives you a perspective
that would make a good
anywhere else. And
that would make a good Halloween costume, just like full body black spandex with a yellow vest on. Call yourself Bob.
Bob has been telling me has been absolutely fascinating because I don't know if you know this, Bob, but again, Bob's not your real name. It's just an anonymous name that we're saying here. I've been watching some Western TV, and again, the last thing that happened after this crazy, very violent, I think the most violent ever, 18th week protest, the mainstream media in America mentioned it for 2 minutes, maybe at max, and it was like, oh yeah, there's some French people protesting about fuel. And of course, I'm like, that's not even any of the story. And that's why I wanted to talk to you and get everything. Of course, this video is probably going to go longer than 10 minutes. The first part's going to be on our main channel. The longer part's going to be on our backup channel. But Bob, first of all, wow, the 18th week was really insane. Where is this movement right now? Because it's definitely not going away like many people want it to.
Yeah, there's been a militarization of the conflict, and it's going wilder right now. The Interior Ministry, what you could call the Homeland Security in the United States, the Interior Ministry is now calling for the deployment of the Sentinel, which is troops, military troops surrounding the next Yellow Vest protest. So it is now allowed through.
That guy there might have gotten hit by like a rubber bullet or something. They're using rubber bullets, a lot of tear gas. I can't imagine how many like gallons of tear gas they've used so far. Yeah, and just riot sticks. That's mostly what they've been using. Now they're talking about using live ammunition.
The urgency state laws that were enabled I think it was a couple of months ago because of the terrorist attacks, and these emergency laws enable the utilization of military personnel on the streets, which was supposedly to prevent terrorist attacks, but now they are going to be used for Yellow Vest protests. So
wow.
the word
is this
terrorists,
like martial law?
No, it's not martial law. But that's the tricky thing, you don't have to, in France, because of these laws, you don't need martial law to bring these military personnel on the ground to protect certain institutions. That's what they say, but you don't protect institutions with military personnel if it's a social demonstration or any demonstration that is coming from a social uproar in the country. So the word terrorist is now being used many times on TV shows, describing last Saturday's revolt on the Champs-Élysées. It's
so BMTV probably,
not
the CNN
only,
of France, and all the other mainstream media outlets are saying, if you're if you're a part of the Yellow Vest movement, that's the media. I mean, kind of the state media talking point, right? That they're terrorists.
No, we are not saying it's all the Yellow Vests, but because these 2,000 black blocs were there, and when we saw the images, you know, we have to defend the republic, defend the state, and the integrity of our government. Whatever, they have their own rhetoric to say that it's a terrorist. They don't say terrorist attack, but they say it's a. I mean, they're sleeping. It's a war on semantics. They're saying terrorist is an attack on institutions that can cause death, but there were no death actually, and it's also. I mean, you could see the images. All this fire. Of course, no one is defending this, but it was only attacking buildings or shops or symbols like you know, this restaurant that is called I don't remember the name again now.
It's one of the most famous French restaurants there. There was also a building. There was allegedly a child and a mother trapped that were screaming in the fire that started from the bank. I mean, there's also been a huge discussion. And I want to bring this up because when I'm at the Yellow Vest movement, there's a big faction of people who are very peaceful, who are saying, stop attacking the police, who are there to mediate stuff. And then there's another element that it seems like the police are letting get away with more violent crime, and the police seem to be attacking those peaceful people more, which I wanted to bring up to you, because that's kind of my understanding of it. Am I right or am I wrong? And what's your take on this bigger violence?
I couldn't hear everything what you said, but I kind of understood that you were asking if there were a more peaceful protest in overall. I would say yes, because I mean, you don't become a violent person from one day to the other. It's not happening like this. The people who are really protesting with violence, they have done this, I mean, in the past. And there's a few elements of people who became violent because of the repression, the police, that was using also a lot of these weapons like the flashball and so on. I mean, you can imagine 20 people lose their
the
eyes.
flashball, which literally blinded about what is it now? Over 20 people now.
It's forbidden.
There's people
it's
without
forbidden
hands.
in all other EU states. You can imagine. I mean, France is the only country where you can use these so-called semi-lethal weapons. I mean, how can it...
Yeah, less lethal, they call them here in America.
Right.
So it's like less likely to kill you. That's really what they're saying.
It didn't kill, but it destroyed lives. And if you mutilate some persons because they were demonstrating for their rights, I mean, it's not anymore a semi-lethal weapon. It's a repression. It's a militarized repression. And these people usually didn't have any weapon in their hands. Some of them probably I don't know, less than 10 people who were injured were actually violent, but the majority of them were not. I mean, 2,000 people were injured, and some of them really hard. On the other side, you have something which is also a form of violence, which is that 20 police officers took their own life since the beginning of this year, in 2019. If you want to have a comparison, there were only 36, I mean, only, it's not a right word actually, but there were 36 people of them who took their life last year. So if you compare these two numbers, it's a crazy number for 2019. It's not directly because of this Yellow Vest protest, because many of the policemen are actually for this protest, but not the violent protest. But they have no means to do their work. They are being pressured on a daily basis. Sometimes they have to pee on the ground. I mean, they have to pee in their pants because they have no pause during the day. They have no protection.
Yeah, and if I could interrupt you, if I could interrupt.
Sounds like they need to equip them with diapers along with those, along with the live fire weapons.
I talked to some of the police officers, and they are way overworked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Extremely stressed out, and you could just see it on their faces because, again, every week, this is 19 weeks of huge protest everywhere, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and then they have to guard that area. But one thing I wanted to bring up with you, because there always has been this kind of two different factions within the Yellow Vest movement. One is the violent, one is the non-violent.
So this has been going on for almost 5 months, these protests? That's insane.
And depending on what happens, sometimes the police, usually the police, from what I have seen, start the problems, start the aggression, start the violence.
Well,
everything I've seen, from everything I've seen personally myself. And you have to ask yourself, is there something to when peaceful protesters are being attacked and the violent protesters are being let go and pretty much allowed to do what they want? Because that's what some people are saying is happening, that the police are mainly attacking peaceful protesters, but when it comes to the violent elements, they want those to happen since they make people not like the Yellow Vest. There's even police officers running around with hammers, which is absolutely terrifying. What's your take on it, and where's the dichotomy between the violent and the non-violent factions now, because it sways so much within the Yellow Vest movement?
Well, first of all, it's very convenient for the government in place to have images of such violent uproar in the streets because they think it can change the majority's opinion. They think it can bend the reality towards their own control on the policies. But in overall, it's a very tricky question because you have to understand that some policemen can actually lose can explode, and just through the pressure can be very violent. But some of them actually were fighting. There was an infighting in the police. I mean, you have another image which is very interesting.
Okay, so we're going to cut it there for this discussion just on this channel. The conversation will, of course, continue on our backup channel.
All right, so I definitely recommend you watch the second part to that. So a lot of interesting, insight to what's going on there. We definitely are hearing from this video the impact that the protests are having on the police themselves. I can just imagine like 5 months of straight protests, having to work just about every day, probably working long hours, getting spit on, getting shit thrown at you, and having to control a bunch of people who you for the most part agree with. That that makes sense. That makes sense why you'd be stressed out. Well, the police, they need to work with the Yellow Vest movement and remove Macron from power. They need to have an uprising over the government, is what I think, because if they're not happy with their government, if most of the people, it seems, are not happy with their government, then that needs to change, because it's not just one political faction that's become radicalized. It's a bunch of people who just got fed up. There comes a point where, it's more radical to continue accepting the tyranny, continuing to accept being taxed out of existence, continuing to be having your rights taken away. It's more radical to allow that to happen than to actually step up and do something about it.
On youtube.com/.
So now we got this story out of RT. Italy's intention to back China's Silk Road is a message to maximize EU interests. And after this video, we're gonna look into what is the new Chinese Silk Road Belt and Road initiative. So that's coming up in the next video. But this is interesting because China's economic influence is spreading. and they're investing a lot of money into building ports and setting up trade agreements and setting up incentives for other countries to trade with them. China is heavy, their economic system is heavily Keynesian when it comes to their mythology. Yes, it's communist, and I think the two ideas kind of intertwined. Keynesianism is when you're spending, the government spends money in order to improve the economy. So I think China is just creating a huge bubble for itself by building all this infrastructure, and you've probably heard of the Chinese ghost cities. Like, they've created whole cities that no one even occupies. We can take a look at that real quick on YouTube. Ghost cities.
It's very easy to be overwhelmed by China. A booming nation of 1.3 billion people whose increasingly prosperous lives are driving development on a scale the world has never seen.
China is constantly on the move. It's estimated that in the next decade, 350 million people will leave the land for the city. It is the largest population movement in human history, and it's leading to the rise of the megacity.
The old gives way to the new. Entire cities emerge, seemingly from nowhere.
Well, it's absolutely phenomenal. And when you look at the scale of the cities, Chongqing, 31.5 million people in Chongqing. And most people have never heard of it.
Melbourne architect Robert Caulfield is among the experts who've been invited in by the Chinese. They like his grand designs and have awarded him prized contracts to transform not just a few blocks, but entire cities.
Just over in that area there will be the new hub.
From sketch to animation to construction. It all happens at dizzying speed.
One of our projects, they were actually putting in the roads before we'd even finished the drawings, and we just couldn't produce it fast enough.
So as quick as you're drawing it, they're building it.
Well, quicker than we were drawing it. It's like China Inc. It's like a corporation with the 5-year plan, everyone going in the one direction.
I've had it suggested to me that doing business with the communists is good because they make a decision.
Well, they do make decisions.
It's that full throttle philosophy that has transformed cities like Shanghai, no matter what the cost.
This is a common sight on old buildings.
And I would like to visit China one of these days, but I wouldn't be too excited to visit their cities, considering that, their environmental standards are pretty shit and there's smog in a lot of the cities. But I actually dated a Chinese girl who said that there's a couple of cities that are pretty environmentally friendly. They got like bike lanes everywhere, trees everywhere. So hopefully one of these days I get a chance to visit China. But I'm more interested in looking at the countryside. Like, I've seen some crazy like natural caves and like all kind of natural formations, really cool stuff.
These red painted characters, translated, mean to be demolished. It won't be long before this block becomes another skyscraper.
In the middle of this soaring metropolis, we come across a grand old traditional Chinese house, marked for destruction.
Ni hao. Ni hao. Good to meet you.
Mrs. Shi and her family have lived here for 70 years, and that protest banner in the window lets everyone around here know they don't want to move.
So let me understand this. Let's have a look at your neighbours. One big high-rise there. Another big high-rise there. And your house right in the middle, but you don't want to move.
No, they're asking us to leave, but we will never be willing to do so.
Mrs. Scher's not alone in trying to hold her ground. Have a look at what happens when people like her refuse to budge. The developers just
What?
build around them.
Are you kidding
No matter
me?
how absurd the lengths or depths they have to go to.
What?
There's no time to dispute, no lodging a building complaint with council.
Whoa,
Developers-
what the hell? Yo! That's fucked up, dude. Wow. They just fucking cut around it, bro. Wow. I'm surprised they don't just kick them out and fucking... Because technically... I don't know how real estate works in China, but this girl I dated, she told me, like, that you don't really own your property. You kind of just, you know, you like, even if you buy a house, like, you don't necessarily, I don't know.
Simply move too fast. And the new buildings appear as quickly as it takes to demolish the old ones. This 30-story hotel went up in just 2 weeks.
So basically, prefabricated floor
Look how
plates
many
and
people.
prefabricated.
Look how many people are working on it too. Like, and they're just up and around. You see a construction site in New York City, and you see like half the people are chilling, having their lunch break because they're unionized usually.
Walls that are all just moved in and put in place by a crane. It's like a big Lego set. The danger with that sort of development is that there is the risk of a lot of buildings being built that all look the same.
However, this unfathomable ambition to rehouse hundreds of millions of citizens has created some truly bizarre anomalies.
Have you ever wondered what it might be like if you were the last person on Earth? Well, I'd imagine that it would be something like this. And I've got to tell you, it is a very strange and eerie feeling. Everything is here, an entire city. All the buildings, the roads, schools, hospitals, you name it. Everything that is, except the people. And looking around, there is not a soul to be seen.
And this is a good example of the waste that communism creates. They just build a bunch of shit that, you know, like they'll build a bridge to nowhere. And look at this, you got like electricity still running through here, being wasted. It's such waste. And there's like a lot of graphs that'll show you the environmental impact of communism. There. You'll see some, you know, this is an example of the sea getting dried up. Like there's different, I don't know. Communism. Well, anyways, there's plenty of documentation of this. You can check it out for yourself. Just research communism and environment or environmental impact, and you'll see like Stalin fucked up a lot of the land in the Soviet Union, and China. Mao fucked up a lot of land, and they continue to fuck up a lot of land. I mean, it's you know what's how could it be a good thing if you're creating a whole city for nothing? There's no use to it. So, I think they're creating the ghost cities to keep their economy going, like artificially. You know, keep the construction guys in business, and you know, they're creating a huge bubble, I think.
This is a new city called Lingang, an hour's drive from Shanghai, built for nearly 1 million people. It's almost like a cardboard cutout of a city, and in some places, a giant facade. Rows of vacant shops, restaurants and office buildings waiting for customers, diners and workers.
What's crazy is that they furnish these buildings. Like, you've got the seats, the pillows. You even got the little knickknacks on the on the counter. Probably to get your toothpick or whatever.
And office buildings waiting for customers, diners and workers.
When you walk around these ghost cities, what are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? Well, I mean, I'm gobsmacked. I mean, I'm gobsmacked that there are so many malls and empty apartments just standing vacant, and yet they're still building more. It doesn't seem to make sense.
Hong Kong-based financial analyst Gillum Tulloch says neither he nor the world has ever seen anything like the phenomenon of China's ghost cities.
They've constructed huge residential areas with shopping malls, etc., and no one's moved in to live in them. Just because you build it doesn't mean they'll come.
Clearly, they're not coming.
No, I mean, 700 million people in China live on less than $2 a day. They simply can't afford these. And that's why these apartments are sitting empty, because there's no one who can afford to live in them.
And we've definitely talked about the living situation in China. I remember looking at this video on the Sunday morning show that showed people living in cages, like a 6-foot by 4-foot cage that they would literally that's what they would be paying rent on, and you'd have people stacked up on each other in these cages. So instead of helping those people move to these new cities, subsidizing the rent, maybe making it cheaper or something like that for them, they're letting them be cramped up in these crappy tenement buildings, and it doesn't make sense.
It's not just residential developments. Sprawling commercial districts also lie empty. This is Yujiapu, new city, hyped to become China's Manhattan. In fact, challenging New York as the world's biggest financial district. But on our bitterly cold journey, we find it is utterly devoid of any sign of life.
This is one of the more staggering sights I think I've seen. It's an entire city, quite literally, frozen in time. Now, only 6 months ago, construction on this massive project was in full swing. But now, it's all at a standstill. I can count at least 30 skyscrapers over there where the work has completely stopped. Officially, they say that this project is just on hold. But you've got to say, especially in these sub-zero temperatures, the future of this city looks especially bleak.
This is the largest property bubble that has ever been.
Selfishly, from Australia's point of view, we like this bubble because we keep shipping iron ore and other raw materials to China so they can keep building these cities.
Yeah, I wouldn't give up the day job, as they say. And I mean, I'd be very nervous, because if the bubble does burst, then you simply have to follow the supply chain, and the supply chain ends up in Australia.
But for the Australians helping to build the new China, all this construction makes perfect sense when you remember China's booming population, thriving middle class, and unwavering drive to become the world's dominant superpower.
Well, it's absolutely phenomenal, because there's somewhere between 400 and 500 million people still living in what the Chinese government considers to be inadequate accommodation. So they're going hell for leather to build this accommodation.
400 to 500 million people. I mean, it's hard to get your head around it.
They're staggering,
That's more than the official population of the United States. The official population is around 350 million. It's probably closer to 400, 500 by now, I would say, because they've been saying that for like the past 10 years. But yeah, that's an America's worth of people living in inadequate housing, and by China standards, there's probably those those little cages that you get that I mentioned that we talked about in a previous episode.
Architect Robert Caulfield has been commissioned to redesign a vast area of the historic city of Nanjing. And the journey there is a reminder of why China's megacities work. They're connected by 10,000 kilometres of high-speed train lines.
Have a look at the speed now. 303 kilometres an hour.
And accelerating. Imagine one of these running between Sydney and Melbourne.
Oh, blink and you'd be there.
Yeah, that's right. It's got a very long and rich history.
Nanjing was once the ancient capital of China, home to the Ming dynasty and a revered site. It's now entrusted to an Australian architect with some big ideas.
We're proposing a cable car system that goes right along the front of the lake.
Caulfield also has approved plans for a futuristic project in the city centre.
Well, what we've got here, Michael, is that just over in that area there will be the new hub building, and there's a high-speed rail that goes actually through these buildings here, and this goes for about 5 kilometres down this road, and there'll be a number of high-rise factories in this area.
I mean, it's one thing to sit in your Melbourne office and dream up this amazing renovation of a city, but to be standing here and seeing it underway.
It is quite remarkable. It happens so quickly, and there's 24 square kilometres in this master plan area that we've done. That's enormous.
That just seems to be the way things roll.
All right, so you get the idea. You know, they're creating a huge real estate bubble, spending a lot of money, the Chinese are. And who knows if that'll work for them in the long run. I mean, at the end of the day, they buy a lot of American real estate, a lot of American properties. A lot of people say Hollywood is pretty much owned by China now. And you see a lot of movies kind of promote, you know, Chinese excellence and things like that. Like I didn't watch The Martian, but I heard The Martian. The story involved like China being the superpower, sending Matt Damon to space or whatever. And they're definitely are for the idea of a global government. Because they want to be the head of that global government. They want to control everything. It's kind of what communism does. It's, you know, it's like a virus that tries to replicate and spread. Because it gives a small group of people a lot of power and a lot of authority, unquestionable power and authority. So let's continue. We're gonna. What are we up to? Oh, we didn't even watch this video. All right, let's check this out.
First, then, European nations and the US are concerned over Italy's determination to take part in China's global trade network, the so-called Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese President Xi Jinping is due in Italy later Thursday to discuss the details of a possible agreement. Marina Kochneva's got more.
The bad boy or the godfather of Euroscepticism, Italy is once again testing relations with the EU, with Rome now pushing to join China's Road and Belt Initiative. It's reportedly setting off alarm bells in Brussels and getting backs up in Washington too.
Italy is a major global economy and great investment destination. No need for Italian government to lend legitimacy to China's infrastructure vanity project.
Endorsing Belt Road Initiative lends legitimacy to China's predatory approach to investment and will bring no benefits to the Italian people.
Italy could become the first member of the so-called Group of Seven, the most powerful nations to join China's ambitious plan to boost connectivity between Asia, Europe, and Africa.
I forget that Italy is part of the Group of Seven.
Local businesses will likely view the project as a positive, with major ports being revamped and investment into the millions of dollars. It's got the Italian press already speculating over a once-forgotten port becoming China's gateway to Europe.
The port of Trieste is returning to the logistical role for Europe that it had for the old Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Business opportunities aside, the Italian Prime Minister will be forced to explain his decision.
The outline of the Belt and Road Memorandum between Italy and China is primarily economic and commercial. It does not put into question our European and Atlantic position. It does not put our national interests at risk, and it is on the same page as European strategy.
His cabinet echoes those words, saying that the deal would be non-binding and would just represent the initial framework, everything to calm their European partners who have labeled Beijing a systemic rival, especially allies on the other side of the Atlantic.
It's called One Belt, One Road, and it's global. And if you look at the spots where they're engaging in, you see some geopolitical and military aspects.
We will not allow China to develop its so-called One Belt, One Road strategy.
Even China's cutesy promos haven't helped change Americans' minds.
The belt connects the land, the road moves on the sea. The promise that they hold is joint prosperity. We're breaking barriers, we're making history. We share the goodness now.
After Italy, the Chinese leader is planning his next stop in Paris. But here, the expectations of talks going well are not as promising.
All right, so understandably, you know, the Western world is a little bit, is very wary of China spreading its economic tentacles throughout Europe. That puts in jeopardy, you know, the alliances and trade deals that United States and European powers, other European and other European powers other than Italy, you know, the deals that they have with Italy. So this next video gives a better idea of what this Belt and Road Initiative is, and it's from Vox, this video. China's $1 trillion plan to dominate global trade.
There's a new highway in Pakistan, and a new rail terminal in Kazakhstan. A seaport in Sri Lanka recently opened, as well as this bridge in rural Laos. What's interesting is that they're all part of one country's project that spans 3 continents and touches over 60% of the world's population. If you connect the dots, it's not hard to see which country that is. This is China's Belt and Road Initiative, the most ambitious infrastructure project in modern history that's designed to reroute global trade. And it's how China plans to become the world's next superpower.
Kazakhstan.
It's 2013, and Chinese President Xi Jinping is giving a speech in Kazakhstan, where he mentions the ancient Silk Road, a network of trade routes that spread goods, ideas, and culture across Europe, the Middle East, and China as far back as 200 BC. He then says,
"We should take an innovative approach and jointly build an economic belt along the Silk Road."
A month later, Xi is in Indonesia.
The two sides should work together to build up a new maritime road in the 21st century.
These two phrases were the first mentions of Xi's legacy project, the multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. They're also the two components of the plan. There's an overland economic belt of 6 corridors that serve as new routes to get goods in and out of China, like this railroad connecting China to London, and these gas pipelines from the Caspian Sea to China, and a high-speed train network in Southeast Asia. Then there's the Maritime Silk Road, a chain of seaports stretching from the South China Sea to Africa that also directs trade to and from China. The BRI also includes oil refineries, industrial parks, power plants, mines, and fiber optic networks, all designed to make it easier for the world to trade with China. So far, over 60 countries have reportedly signed agreements for these projects. And the list is growing because China promotes it as a win-win for everyone. Take, for example, the BRI's flagship project, Pakistan. Like many countries in Central and South Asia, Pakistan has a stagnant economy and a corruption problem. It wasn't a popular place for foreign investment, that is until China came along. In 2001, China offered to build a brand new port in the small fishing town of Gwadar. By 2018, the port, as well as a highway and railway networks, became a $62 billion corridor within the BRI. It's where the economic belt meets the maritime Silk Road, and it seemed to benefit both countries. Pakistan saw its highest GDP growth in 8 years and forged a tight relationship with a major world power. China, on the other hand, secured a new alternative route for goods, especially oil and gas from the Middle East. Through projects like these, it also found a way to boost its economy. Chinese construction companies that had fewer opportunities within their own country saw a huge boost from BRI contracts. 7 out of the 10 biggest construction firms in the world are now Chinese. What tips the balance in China's favor even more is a requirement that it be involved in building these projects. In Pakistan, for example, Chinese workers have directly built projects like this highway here, and a Chinese firm has worked with locals on a railway here in Serbia. China's involvement is one of its very few demands, and that's set these deals apart so far. See, typically, to get investment from the West, countries have to meet strict ethical standards. But China's offered billions of dollars, mostly in loans, with far fewer conditions. So it's no surprise the BRI has been a big hit with the less democratic countries in the region. China has signed agreements with authoritarian governments, military regimes, and some of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's even affiliated with Afghanistan, Ukraine, Yemen, and Iraq, all currently splintered by conflict. Because of China's willingness to loan money to unreliable countries, many experts have called the BRI a risky plan. Eventually, these countries will have to pay China back, but corruption and conflict make that payback unlikely. A recent report found that many of the countries indebted to China are very vulnerable, including 8 that are at high risk of being unable to pay. So why does China keep lending? Because there's more to the BRI than just economics. In Sri Lanka, China loaned about $1.5 billion for a new deepwater port. It was a key stop on the maritime Silk Road. By 2017, it was clear Sri Lanka couldn't pay back the loan, so instead they gave China control of the port as part of a 99-year lease. China also controls the strategic port in Pakistan, where it has a 40-year lease. It's pushing for a similar agreement in Myanmar, and it just opened an actual Chinese naval base in Djibouti. These are all signs of what's been called the string of pearls theory. It predicts that China is trying to establish a string of naval bases in the Indian Ocean that will allow it to station ships and guard shipping routes that move through the region. So while China's not getting its money back, it's still achieving some very important strategic goals. China's growing influence challenges the status of the US, which has been the world's lone superpower for the last several decades. But isolation is trending in the US, meaning that they are investing less and therefore losing influence around.
I like how they included Canada. It's like, bro, you said America, bro. We're right here. Why you got all this right here?
The world. The BRI is China's way of leveraging power to become a global leader. By building relationships and taking control of global trade, China's well on its way.
Yeah, so so that just shows how, just another aspect of China trying to achieve global hegemony. They've got military expansion in the Pacific, and they've got economic expansion throughout Asia and into Europe and throughout the Middle East. It's kind of just like they're operating as far as these foreign deals along the same lines as the World Bank and the IMF. What they do is they lend a bunch of money to countries they know can't pay back, and then the countries are indebted to them forever, basically. That's happening in a lot of different countries, that especially like in Africa, where you get like these corrupt warlords running the countries, and they'll take whatever money they can get because they don't give a shit about the country. They give a shit about themselves only. So while they're getting rich, they're giving up ownership to land rights and mineral rights and oil rights to China and other foreign countries, and that's how they stay basically neo-colonialized, except mostly through economic means, not military means or anything like that. But they're still pretty much colonies because they're beholden to the people that they owe money to.
Now turning to the crisis at our southern border.
So we showed a video last week of people actually actively crossing the border, cutting through like a piece of fence and crossing the border. It appears that the influx of illegal immigrants is not stopping, and now the immigration officials, I think ICE is the agency that is going to be releasing all these migrants into the interior of the United States. So even if they get caught, they come in illegally, they get caught. There's no place to put all these people, so they just get released into the country.
New reports tonight that immigration officials plan to release nearly 2,000 illegal immigrants in our country just this weekend. The reason? Detention centers are running out of space, so they have no other choice but to unleash these illegal immigrants into our southern states. Joining me now is former acting ICE Director Tom Homan. Tom, every day there is more evidence of an emergency at our border. This is just the most recent. I mean, every day we get from nonpartisan publications like the news side of the Wall Street Journal, for example, coming out with these horrific reports of how people are overwhelmed at the southern border. I don't think it's possible for anybody to say that there's not an emergency down there. Do you?
Oh, it's possible. The Democrats are going to continue to say there's not an emergency. Look, this president's been right. President Trump's been right from day one on this issue. I mean, the number of families coming across now is historic. You look at the number of families coming across and the others coming across the border right now, based on the rise that's happening every week, we're going to have close to 1 million illegal entries in the United States. If that's not a national emergency, I don't know what is. And also the opioids coming across the southern border. President Obama claimed national emergency. The swine flu kills 12,000. Opioids have killed 70,000, and that's not a national crisis. This isn't about doing the right thing for this nation. This is about making sure that Donald Trump does not get a win on the border. Yeah. That's what it's about.
And, we had some terrific reporters that are down there. William LaJeunesse, one of our reporters, was down there reporting on how these busloads of Central Americans come in, go to a part of the border that doesn't have, it has a sort of a fence. It's kind of about 3 feet high. You can either climb under it or easily climb over it. And these busloads of immigrants come in and just walk over. They get caught, of course, but then they have to be let go because there's no space, no place to put them. They can't be adjudicated, etc. So that's what's happening right now.
Look, it's another clear example why a wall is necessary. Every place they built a border barrier, illegal immigration went down and narcotic smuggling went down. At 100% of the time, it's proved effective. And what we really need to do to slow this surge down right now, ICE, the agency I used to run, needs to get out there, locate these families and have their due process at great taxpayer expense, been ordered removed. They need to arrest them and remove them. Why? Because I did that 3 years ago, and the result, almost immediate result, was the border crossings went down because we showed there's a consequence to violating the laws of this country. We need to do that again.
But if you have a wall, you wouldn't have to go through the process. All of these processes, arresting, fingerprinting, et cetera, they all take time. They all take manpower, and we just are overwhelmed down there. We don't have the personnel to do it.
Well, some families are going to still come to the port of entry. So, look, you can't demand due process. You can't demand to see a judge, and when you get the decision, the decision needs to mean something. Those decisions need to be executed, or there's no integrity in the entire system. But I agree with you. The wall would certainly help. The barrier would certainly help. And we got to change the loopholes. We got to change the Florida Settlement Agreement. We got to change the asylum laws.
Well,
Congress has failed to act.
You still have Democrats. I don't know if we have that soundbite of O'Rourke, but you have Beto O'Rourke saying just recently that we don't need a wall, despite the fact that we have evidence of what. Do we have that? Yeah, let's play the soundbite and get your reaction.
I'm here to tell you a profoundly positive story from the U.S.-Mexico border. We do not need any walls. $30 billion, 2,000 miles long, 30 feet high, that will not be built on the international boundary line, which is the center line of the Rio Grande River. That wall will be built well into the interior of someone's ranch, someone else's farm, someone else's home. You and I will be forced to take their property to solve a problem that we do not have.
We don't.
So that's a valid criticism of the wall, is that building a wall straight across the border would cut into certain properties, private property, also this reservation, this huge reservation that is like half in the United States, half in Mexico. So Beto does have a good reasoning why the wall is not a good idea. I am not in support of the wall, but I am in support of legal immigration. What's the point of having an immigration system if we're not having people follow the law? There's a reason for the law. You got to vet who comes into the country. Just like if somebody, like we have a door and walls in our homes or to your apartment, whatever. Someone rings the bell, you're going to decide whether you want to let the person in or not. It's not like it's not a question. It's not like we keep our doors open all the time so people can just walk in whenever they want. Why? Because you have no idea who's going to walk in. You don't know if that person that wants to walk into your home wants to rob you, wants to rape you, wants to kill you, because the world's full of crazy-ass people, no matter where you go. And, people especially get crazy when they're desperate, such as traveling thousands of miles with little food and water, putting their family at risk in order to get into somewhere else where they think that, they're going to have an easier time, and they will. The thing is, we need to stop offering the welfare, and we just need to ramp up the border patrol numbers, the amount of officers working that, maybe bring some military home from overseas to man the border and make sure we're not getting cartel and human sex trafficking and drug trafficking and all that stuff.
Need a wall when thousands of immigrants are walking underneath or hopping over a fence.
Look, it's ludicrous. And here's the man running for president who refused to watch the video, refuses the data. The data is clear. Anybody can go to the CBP website and look at the data that walls are effective every place they build it. And this guy wants to be the president of the United States. So he's forgetting his first responsibility as president to secure our nation, protect our sovereignty, and to protect the American people. This is what angers me, because they know what the facts are, but they won't admit them. It's an anti-Trump agenda. It's all about open borders, and that's what, they're not going to be happy till we shut all the border patrol stations down and put a welcome center in and give everybody a Democratic voter registration card. Then they'll be happy.
And this slob of a person has a good point too, is that the reason why the Democratic Party is so willing to let anybody come into this country, regardless of anything, without checking their medical history, without giving them a checkup, without looking at their criminal history, without all this stuff. The reason why, the incentive for the Democrats to do this is because they're going to have those people vote Democrat. Oh, you helped me get into the country? Okay, I'll vote for you. And they have even talked about having illegal immigrants vote in elections. So, regardless of what you think about legal immigration or illegal immigration, I would hope to think that, a reasonable person would be against an illegal immigrant, someone who has no ties to the United States, no allegiance to the United States, to be able to vote in an election. Because that's not just saying like, illegal immigrants from Mexico can vote. That means illegal immigrants from anywhere else can vote. You can have a bunch of people from China come across the border, which they do, or the Middle East, which they do, and they can vote for things that go against America's interests. And while in the news you see it's mostly South Americans and Mexicans that cross the border illegally, there's also Chinese and Somalis and Afghanis and a bunch of people that come in, and you don't know who these people are. So that's why some kind of security needs to happen at the border, not a wall necessarily. I don't think, because like they say, most of the illegal immigrants come through point of entry over planes and boats and things like that, and they just overstay their visa. That's typically the way. But still, a lot of human sex trafficking comes through that border. A lot of drug trafficking comes through that border. And a lot of those border towns on the American side are overrun with crime and people coming in and onto their land. And they mentioned Beto O'Rourke, so we've got this short video. Beto reveals his policy decision on late-term abortions.
You're a pig. Pig. You're a pig.
Because I don't want to kill babies.
Oh, you kill them. You let them live so they can starve to death.
Millie Weaver reporting for Infowars.com. We're here in Cleveland, where 2020 presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke is scheduled to come speak. Beto O'Rourke has been pretty hush about which policies he supports. Let's go see if we can nail down where he stands.
Thank you for asking the question. There was a question over here.
Yes. Are you for third trimester abortions, or are you going to protect the lives of third trimester babies?
So late-term abortion, if you don't know, is, let's just get the basically what it means is that, okay, there's a certain stage of pregnancy where the baby can live on its own. You probably have heard of premature babies that can even be given birth around, I think 6 months is as early as you can. So late-term abortion, yeah, because it's in trimesters, so it's 9 months. So the third trimester, is from 6 months to 9 months. So basically, the baby can survive. It's been in the womb for over 6 months. And the idea behind late-term abortion is that you still terminate the baby. So it's infanticide. It's not an abortion anymore. Let's see if we can get this really quick. And
Virginia's governor
now the Virginia governor who got caught with some graduation photos or yearbook photos of him dressed up as in blackface and KKK outfits. There's this famous clip of him talking about late-term abortion and defending it.
Has no regrets on his comments earlier this week defending abortion, even as a baby is being born.
This is old news, but it's important that we look at it again.
Democrats believe legislatures, most of whom are men, should not be making decisions about women's choices for their reproductive health. We have team coverage tonight, including White House correspondent Mark Irons, with the reaction from one of President Trump's closest advisors. But we begin with Capitol.
Yesterday. Here's what Virginia's governor did say.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Now, Senator Sass.
So again, the baby would be delivered, kept comfortable, and then they make a decision whether to kill the baby or not.
Governor Northam's comments. I'm sorry, I just don't know what he said yesterday. Here's what Virginia's governor did say.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Now, Senator.
So that to me is just sick right there. And then you've got these deals at Planned Parenthood and other organizations that do abortions, I guess. They make deals to sell baby parts. And Project Veritas, through the Center for Medical Progress.
Look, I think health screenings are important. I think Planned Parenthood probably does some good work. But the reason it's a controversial place is because it's the country's biggest abortion provider, and you're one of the people who run it. And so I just want to know what you think. If you can hear the fetal heartbeat and then it's extinguished, what do you think of that? Is that a big deal or not to you? And if not, why not?
Well, I take seriously all of the health care work that we provide at Planned Parenthood. I believe in safe, legal abortion. I believe it's up to each woman and individual.
I know, but what do you
and
think?
so I'm not going to make a judgment.
So you can see these full videos easily on YouTube.
It's not a matter of how I feel about it coming out in text, but I got to worry about my staff and people's feelings about it coming out looking like a baby.
Is there any standard procedure for verifying signs of life?
Well, the thing is,
that doesn't go in a chart.
I mean, the key is you need to pay attention to who's in the room, right?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Deborah Nucatola. I'm the Senior Director of Medical Services for Planned Parenthood Federation of America.
A lot of people want attack cards these days because they're looking for specific nodes. AB nodes, SA. I was like, wow, I didn't even know. Good for them.
And on behalf of all of us at Planned Parenthood Federation of America and our partners at Society of Family Planning, I'd like to welcome you to the North American Forum on Family Planning, as well as the George Tiller Memorial Networking Reception. Now, networking reception. Those of you who have seen me in the last hour have seen that I basically spend this reception running around introducing people to other people, and that's exactly why this meeting was created.
Nice to meet you.
I have an abortion in Arizona.
Wow.
Which is exactly why
you just did it over.
Robert Sarkis with Biomass Procurement Services.
Okay.
We do tissue collection.
Oh, sweet.
Good to meet
And
you.
they're looking for Arizona as an area where they might
Right.
be able to
We're based out of the Los Angeles area, like Norwalk, Long Beach, that kind of area.
Okay.
So Devin mentioned you as well as the Planned Parenthood affiliate in Arizona, as well as good connections to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you?
It's been on my mind because I used to work at Planned Parenthood Los Angeles, and we used to have
Novogenics, I think, is the one that comes in, to do it there.
Yeah.
So you have experience with providing material for research purposes. Yeah.
Due to some things going on at Planned Parenthood, I get a lot of referrals from Planned Parenthood. So I used to be medical director at Planned Parenthood Arizona. That's how I ended up in Arizona.
Okay.
Because I was with.
So, not to go into it too much further, but again, you can look for the full video at the Center for Medical Progress. Oh, I should stop that. I believe this was part of Project Veritas, and they go undercover and posing as fetal tissue procurement organizations. And they got these people on tape, admitting that, when you have an abortion, the fetal tissue, the aborted baby parts, is used for research and other things. And there's actually this website that has a really good video that... Abortion procedures, is this the one? Yeah, this is the video that everybody should see. This is showing a second trimester abortion, and the baby looks like the fetus looks like a baby at this point as well. But what we're talking about, Beto is supporting third trimester abortion, so the baby would be further grown, able to survive on its own. For sure in the third trimester. So this is what happens during an abortion. Most people don't know the specifics.
My name is Dr. Anthony Levatino. I'm a practicing obstetrician gynecologist, and I've performed over 1,200 abortions. Today I'm going to describe a second trimester surgical abortion called dilatation and evacuation, or D&E. A D&E is performed between 13 and 24 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a weighted speculum, like this one, that opens the vagina widely. Because second trimester babies are so large, this greater access facilitates a late-term abortion. Late-term abortion requires that the cervix be prepared 24 to 48 hours in advance with laminaria. Laminaria is a type of sterilized seaweed that absorbs water over 8 to 12 hours and swells to several times its original diameter. Once removed, metal dilators can be used to further open the cervix as needed. Once the cervix has been stretched open, the suction tube is placed inside. A baby at 20 weeks gestation is as big as the length of my hand, from head to rump, not counting the legs. The suction machine is turned on, and pale yellow amniotic fluid surrounding the baby is suctioned out through the catheters. With babies this big, they don't fit through catheters this size. The baby's bones and skull are too strong to be torn apart by suction alone. This is a Sofer clamp. A Sofer clamp is made of stainless steel. It's about 13 inches long. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and a 1/2 inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument. When it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. The abortionist uses this clamp to grasp an arm or leg. Once he has a firm grip, the abortionist pulls hard in order to tear the limb from the baby's body. One by one, the rest of the limbs are removed, along with the intestines, the spine, and the heart and lungs. Usually the most difficult part of the procedure is extracting the baby's head, which is about the size of a large plum at 20 weeks. The head is grasped and crushed. The abortionist knows he has crushed the skull when a white substance comes out of the cervix. This was the baby's brains. The abortionist then removes skull pieces. He removes the placenta and any leftover parts of the baby with a curette, scraping the lining of the uterus for any remaining tissue. The abortionist then collects the baby parts and reassembles them to make sure that there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Once all the parts have been accounted for, the abortion is complete. For the woman, this procedure carries a significant risk of major complications, including perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, with possible damage to the bowel, bladder, and other maternal organs. Infection and hemorrhage can also occur, which can even lead to death. Future pregnancies are also at greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time.
That is like seriously some disturbing ass shit, and this happens every day. In just today in the United States, 1,230 babies so far have been mutilated inside of the womb, chopped the hell up like a Mortal Kombat fatality. Since 1973, 61 million people were murdered, basically. Weren't given the chance to live. Just black babies, 18 million. Worldwide so far today, 52,000. Worldwide this year so far, 9 million. And worldwide since 1980, 1.5 billion people. Can you just imagine how many Nikola Teslas were in that 1.5 billion people? How many Martin Luther Kings? How many smart and talented people could have had a life and could have helped humanity on its journey to a better place, to a better state of living, and they didn't get a chance to live. And so here's the thing with the late-term abortions. As Northam said in that clip that we showed, the idea is to deliver the baby, and then, you talk with the parent and the doctor to see if they want to kill it or not. But let's say the parent decides to kill the baby even after delivery. From what I understand, you've got these tissue procurement organizations that buy the dead tissue. So you can just imagine how much more valuable it would be to have a live baby, to have a live organ. Because once that baby's aborted, they call these people right away to come down and pick up the stuff, keep it fresh. So with the late-term abortion, you got whole babies coming out that you can sell to these people, and it's this huge, kind of underground market. But there were some laws that let's see, U.S. law, fetus procurement. I think they now passed some kind of, Trump administration cancels FDA fetal tissue contract. The department says it will examine all federal use of fetal tissue for research. So it's a step in the right direction. Department of Health and Human Services probably should ban this practice because it incentivizes these abortion clinics to sell the tissue to these companies, and the parents, they don't get a cut of what they make off of these tissues. Like, you got this baby gestating in you for 6 months, and then you got to pay for it. You got to pay for that removal, and then the Planned Parenthood, they take the money you gave them and they make a little extra more by selling your baby's parts to these organizations. And this guy Beto just completely dodged that question about late-term abortions and conflated it to just abortion in general.
We're asking the question. There was a question over here.
Yes. Are you for third trimester abortions, or are you going to protect the lives of third trimester babies? Because, there's really not a medical necessity for abortion. It's not a medical emergency procedure because typically third trimester abortions take up to 3 days to have. So you would, in that sense, if there was an emergency, the doctors would just do a C-section and you don't have to kill the baby in that essence. So are you for or against third trimester abortions?
So the question is about abortion and reproductive rights. And my answer to you is that should be a decision that the woman makes about her own body. I trust her. So that's my answer. Yes.
His demeanor is like a high school kid or something. I can't get over it.
Sure.
So babies should be killed?
How do we deal with the fact that the Supreme Court is being stacked against us?
Thank you. So there you have it.
Please do something you would only do on camera. Thank you. So, he completely dodged that question, and he was able to because he was in a room full of people already supporting him. So, and that's the thing, man, with politics now, with mainline politics. These people, they find they find an avatar to get behind, a young, charismatic personality to get behind, and it doesn't even matter what the policies are. It doesn't really matter the specifics to them. They just want their guy to win. They want to protect their right to have that abortion. If only people fought so hard for other things. Why do people fight so hard for abortion, for killing life, human life? Which is, the most valuable form of life if you are pro-humanity. And we should be having as many kids as we can, spread throughout the cosmos. We should be, on a space journey to find a second home. We should be colonizing the universe. Why not? There's all this space, right? It's, all these planets out there, right? Why are we so obsessed with fighting over this tiny piece of land, this tiny piece of rock that we got floating around? Okay.
Beto O'Rourke is...
Mueller's mandate was to investigate links between the Trump campaign and Russia and whether there was any coordination between those two entities, Trump associates and members of the Russian government or Russians in general, and then to investigate any crimes that arise out of that in the course of that investigation. Barr has told congressional leaders that he has received the report from the special counsel, that he will review it, and that he will provide lawmakers and the public with a summary of principal findings as soon as this weekend. He is currently at the Justice Department reviewing the report he received from Mueller. Right now, the big push that we're hearing from House Democrats is that they want the entire Mueller report. They want to see everything that Mueller gathered and collected before they decide anything. And so instead of impeachment talk, what we're hearing right now is discussion of possibly subpoenaing for the report or subpoenaing Mueller to get that. There's no question that White House aides and Trump confidants are taking a degree of satisfaction, at least at this moment, that there are no further indictments that have been delivered or that are expected from the special counsel. And so to the extent that that has occurred, that's a degree of relief for them. But I think everybody's still waiting to see exactly what the report indicates about the Trump campaign and then the Trump administration. And so it's a little bit of a holding pattern, but the president, who has spent the last basically 2 years attempting to undermine or sow doubt in the credibility of the investigation, has been noticeably quiet over the last 24 hours with no tweets about it and no public statements about it. The special counsel has indicated that he has not recommended any additional charges or indictments, and so that would mean that he has effectively closed up shop and that no one else will be indicted by Robert Mueller. However, it's important to note that there are all sorts of other investigations going on that originated as referrals from the special counsel that he began investigating and recognized fell outside of his mandate, and so he referred those back to the Justice Department, which then sent them to individual offices of the Justice Department, including in New York City and in Virginia.
We begin tonight with the seismic shift in the...
All right, so, I haven't been following the Mueller report, news about that. I haven't really been following it that much because I already know, I knew this was going to happen. They hyped it up for too long for there to actually be something of substance for Mueller to find. He was investigating Trump for 2 years or something like that. And now they're going to do these other investigations. And I think the bright side is that maybe politicians will be held more accountable now. I would hope that, there be investigations done on Democrats too. Not just on Trump, but let's do an investigation on Pelosi. Let's do an investigation on whoever gets elected, president next time, whether it be Democrat or Republican. We should investigate people if they have, if there's some shady stuff going on. But I think if there was anything to be found, it would have been found by whatever investigation they do on candidates anyway, because anytime you run for president, they do a background check. They make sure that you don't have criminal charges or that you got criminal stuff going on. So there's on the one side, it's spending all this resources and time. Although the Mueller investigation actually generated money from seizures and stuff like that, but it can be argued that you're spending a lot of time on this when you could be spending time on investigating other things. But I do hope that, this means that politicians will be investigated more thoroughly in the future. I think Hillary Clinton, got away with a lot. And, she definitely needs to be investigated with, the nuke deal that she made with Russia, giving Russia control of a third of our uranium while she was Secretary of State, leading us into Libya, basically destroying that country, taking down Gaddafi. There's so much dirt on Hillary Clinton, man. She helped when she was a lawyer. back in the day, she defended rapists and things like that, and she's been accused of silencing victims of Bill Clinton, like people that Bill Clinton has raped and assaulted sexually. She was very active in silencing them.
We begin tonight with the seismic shift in the Russia investigation. The Mueller report now in the hands of the new Attorney General, William Barr. How much, if anything, will America get to see? The AG reading the report at the Justice Department today, 24 hours after receiving it. His first summary could be made public as early as tomorrow. One headline already revealed from the 22-month investigation, ABC News has learned Robert Mueller is not recommending any further indictments. And tonight, new images of President Trump addressing guests during a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago. ABC News learning the president is telling close associates he's, quote, glad it's over. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas leads us off.
Tonight, all eyes on William Barr, the Attorney General seen on his way to the Justice Department this morning, where the review of Robert Mueller's confidential and comprehensive report is still underway. Barr could reveal the report's key findings as early as tomorrow. The Russia investigation spanning 22 months led to 37 indictments, including some of President Trump's closest advisors and associates. While he awaits the content of the report, sources say the president, seen waving to supporters in Florida today, is in.
I can just imagine if what the hell? This looks so retarded. What? What is this? Can you just imagine if every politician got this level of investigation, how much dirt would get uncovered? I personally think that, you know, federal government needs a council of accountability, something that an extra check in the checks and balances that can that's independent of everything, that can just have some elected officials or something like that we can elect and look into different things, make sure that the government is acting responsibly.
In a great mood, telling those gathered at his Mar-a-Lago club he's glad it's over. It was an investigation he attacked at every turn.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt. They won't find any collusion. It doesn't exist.
There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. There was no nothing.
But even he has called for the report's release.
Let it come out. Let people see it. That's up to the Attorney General.
The Attorney General says he wants transparency, and he will work with Mueller and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who oversaw the investigation, to determine what information from the report can be released to Congress and the public consistent with the law. Barr promised as much during his confirmation hearings.
I am going to make as much information available as I can.
Here's what we know tonight. The special counsel is recommending no further indictments, and the Attorney General maintains Mueller was not stopped from pursuing any targets. Barr's summary of conclusions are expected to address whether the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians and whether the president obstructed justice.
And Pierre Thomas.
Yeah, and there's like the video mentioned, there's going to be more investigations done by Congress. It's easy to foresee that there's going to be investigations up until the next election. And I think Democrats are really fighting hard, even though his term's almost up, because they don't have faith in their own candidates, in their 17 or 18 candidates. I don't think they're that confident in them winning the presidency, despite how badly they think Trump has been running the country, which surely is debatable depending on who you talk to. I don't think he's done any better a job than Obama or Bush at this point. But there are a couple things that are good, such as getting us out of TPP and some criminal justice reform, stuff like that. So these videos came out yesterday. There might be new news out about it. I doubt it. Let's see. Is there anything? Congress still, as of 2 hours ago, still waiting for the Attorney General's summary. Okay.
Joins us now from Washington.
36-year-old Mark Gomez.
Oh, this was some. This went viral on Twitter a couple days ago. At least in the New York area, went viral. And I just couldn't even look at my timeline. I was like, "What the heck is going on here?" This guy kicked the crap out of an old lady. Watch.
36-year-old Mark Gomez of Yonkers kept his head bowed low and didn't answer any questions about the heinous attack he is now charged with, allegedly kicking a 78-year-old woman repeatedly in the head and body that was captured on cell phone video for all the world to see. Police thanked the worldwide community for what they called their tremendous assistance in helping to capture the man seen in this video attacking an elderly woman in a subway car. The horrendous assault took place on Sunday, March 10th at about 3:10 in the morning on the number 2 train at the Nereid Avenue, White Plains Road subway station. It was all captured on cell phone video. So disturbing to see a man kicking a 78-year-old woman a total of 6 times, twice in the head, 4 times in the upper body. Police say no one called 911 or tried to stop the attack, but you can hear on the video several people oohing and ahhing. Before the suspect got off the subway, he shouted, "World Star that," referring to the popular social media page filled with violent videos. And then he got off the train. In the court of public opinion, subway riders were outraged that no one stepped in to stop the attack or call police.
That's not right what the person is doing to her. She's old and she needs help and everybody...
So, yeah, that's just a... Man, it's sick. Some of the people that that are out there, especially in big cities. This guy, I don't know what the hell the motive of this guy was. I'm sure the lady wasn't saying anything there. She looked like she was just chilling there. She didn't even say anything while she was getting hit. I mean, and then you got these guys like egging him on and you know, shooting video. They probably egged him on. They probably were like videotaping him and probably like dared him like, "Oh, why don't you know, hit that lady or something like that?" Because there's guys like that all over New York City. Like, "Oh yeah, I bet I could beat his ass." Like, "Oh, was he look? You know, like, oh, look at him. Like I could rob him right now." Blah 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 blah. Like, there's so much shit talking like that in New York City, and you know, I've gotten so used to it, I just ignore it at this point. Like, okay, like if you really are about it, let's see it. If not, then I'm just gonna fucking ignore you. Just a lot of people that just don't know what the hell they're doing in their life. That I don't know. It's hard to understand the perspective of somebody like that. Because when I'm on the train, I don't even want to talk to anybody. I want to look at anybody. I just want to get to where I need to go. Fuck whatever you're doing. But if I saw this guy kicking this lady, I would be like, "Oh shit, this is a great opportunity for me to unleash all my built-up anger. I can destroy this motherfucker." And that's what should have happened to him. I don't know what's up with these kids filming him at 3 in the morning. That they thought it was cool and like, oh shit, like they just chasing clout. Oh, I can post this video and get a bunch of views, or I can sell it to Vlad TV or the World Star. For what though? For what? You're just incentivizing people to come beat on your grandma. You wouldn't want somebody stomping on your grandma, I'm sure. And the people filming sounded like they were young enough to have their grandmas still around. Lucky enough to still have their grandmas around. So yeah, man, like, dude like that just needs to get fucking castrated, fucking have his face ripped off. I mean, if I was there, I would basically, people would have to pull me off of that guy, because I would be doing much worse to him. I would be completely mutilating him with my bare feet and hands and teeth, and just completely destroy that person. But that's the kind of scumbags that we got living in the world. in general, but especially in cities where people are broke and upset and frustrated. And, maybe this guy was in prison before and, just doesn't see his life going anywhere. And it's like, oh, well, I can feel validated for a moment. I can feel acknowledged and validated by stomping this old lady out. Well, I hope that when he gets to jail that someone ass rapes him with a shank, like an American Me, and completely destroys him. But that's just my opinion. And this last thing isn't really a story. It's actually a video from... Oops.
Cheap food.
It's actually a story from... well, it's not a story. It's a video from about last week from Seeker. This channel is actually pretty good. A lot of interesting videos that they post up. I definitely recommend you subscribe to them. Also subscribe to me, by the way. The MC Faceman. YouTube.com/The MC Faceman. I put all my videos in a nice playlist so that you can just pull it up and
To
then
me, it's this
be
whole
watching
notion
all of my videos. The audio won't be fucked up on this one, thankfully, because I actually checked it properly. But anyways, this is a really cool thing, and it has me thinking about what would it look like, the future of agriculture, especially in urban environments.
The average age of an apple in a U.S. grocery store, from the date it was picked till the date it gets in your mouth, is 11 months. And this is usually shocking to people, and it's because we've designed the system. The last kind of big push for agriculture was more cheap food. And we've optimized, maybe not for the best goal. The goal of transport, the goal of cheapness, but not the goal of nutrition, the goal of environmental stewardship, which is now kind of forefront in a consumer's mind that says, where did my food come from? How good is it for me? And those questions require so much more information.
This is Caleb Harper, a research scientist at MIT. As the son of farmers who advised him to get out of the family business and into tech instead, Caleb decided to merge the two worlds.
We design things that we call food computers. And the reason I call them that is because I want to engender that imagination, that curiosity. A food computer is essentially a box that controls and designs the climate. You think like Star Trek or you think Willy Wonka, that's exactly what we're going for.
It's a tabletop machine and technology platform that lets you program a climate for the crop you want. The build components and instructions are accessible, and that's exactly what Caleb and his team had in mind.
We're focused on open source technologies because we believe that that next revolution in agriculture has to be based on open science. That was one of the big misses from technology in the last 30 years, was keeping it proprietary, keeping it closed. I have an IP strategy, which is to put everything in the public domain.
The Open Agriculture Initiative released their first prototype in 2015, giving curious potential farmers a chance to experiment.
We're here to talk about how I grow food in a frozen wasteland. I use a food computer.
I'll be explaining how my food computer functions. So as you can see, there are 4 features that we are currently collecting values for.
One of the biggest challenges that we've met so far was actually Lexan.
They've tweaked the design since and released their newest version, the PFC. Basic tinkering skills not included.
The smallest one behind me is for kind of the maker, the student, the enthusiast, the homebody, the hacker, the scientist that wants to get involved in their own house or in their own labs.
The parts include circuit boards, sensors, lights, and cameras to monitor the plant.
The seed has so much embedded technology inside of it already. So when you take a certain set of genetics and you put it inside of a certain phenome or climate, it will express something. That's called a phenotype. So we want to understand under what conditions do those genetics express flavor, nutrition, size, color, and it has a lot more to do with its environment than its kind of genetic predisposition. So we design CO2 and temperature and humidity and light spectrum and light intensity and minerality of the water and oxygen of the water, and then trying to make sense out of what happened.
The results get converted into a digital climate recipe that can be uploaded for anyone to use.
If you want to build a food computer, first know that you are like on the front lines of what we call the nerd army. Now the project is spread across 65 countries, 3,000 collaborators, and we're starting to build a base of knowledge that will actually be viable for machine learning.
Machine learning and artificial intelligence can make sense out of all the data these food computers generate, tweaking the recipes and helping create a shared language for indoor farming.
The power of that is that all of a sudden agricultural research is not docked geographically. It doesn't have to be ag research is only relevant in Iowa to Iowa. All of a sudden Iowa can become a digital climate, and that digital climate can be shared across 10,000 food computers.
Inside Caleb's lab are these enormous food servers, where they're tackling even bigger questions.
We're looking at the effects of predators, the effects of climate change, and all of this has a big effect on the ultimate result of what that plant has to offer you in terms of flavor and nutrition.
And with climate change impacting agribusiness, companies are starting to pay close attention. 70% of the world's hazelnut trees are grown in Turkey, and lately they've been hit hard by hailstorms and freezing temperatures. Ferrero, the company behind your favorite hazelnut spread, is working with Caleb's team to see if they can grow hazelnut trees in new locations.
We ran a kind of a matrix of different genetic varieties of hazelnut trees, and then we subjected them to South African climate, to Chilean climate, and to Australian climate. Out of these 12 varieties, we found one not only survived, but thrived in these kind of high heat intensity situations. It's totally novel.
But let's get one thing straight. This box isn't exactly going to be your own custom grocery store.
I don't believe that the future holds food computers in every house that feeds them everything they need. But what's really cool is we're learning about the genetic difference between human to human right now. And that's providing so much insight into what you should eat versus what I should eat versus what someone else should eat. Then I see a food computer in every home because it'll grow something very, very specific to you. And it'll be used much more like a pharmacy rather than like a constant food source.
By putting the controls directly into your hands, Caleb hopes that this is only just the beginning of a microfarm revolution.
Can you imagine anything more important than food? How we're all going to eat in the future, and that we can't see above that to see some big common understanding that says, okay, making some of this open, interoperable across all these different disciplines will be better for the world.
So one thing that really stuck out to me in this video is the idea of having these food computers be like your pharmacy, not a constant source of food. So that's very interesting to me, that if you're able to modify crops using environmental factors in a way that it'll work best for you depending on what your DNA is like, what your biology is like. And you can kind of consider this like as genetically modified, but not using chemicals or gene splicing, but by just using environmental factors. I think this is the best way to produce not only good amounts of food for the world, but also nutritious food, because crops are losing their nutritional value. The more you farm on the same soil, even if you rotate the crops and stuff like that, you're still not getting as much nutrients from your carrots as you would 100 years ago. So that's a big problem too. And I think this could be a good way to overcome that challenge of nutrients being depleted from the soil. If you're able to, just scientifically, digitally put that together yourself, all the nutrients necessary down to like the particle, down to the drop, down to the milliliter of whatever, O2, carbon dioxide, whatever plants need. And actually, I do plan on planting some stuff in my backyard. I'm gonna do that. I gotta do that this week because I got a bunch of seeds that are slowly depleting in their own nutritional value and their own viability of being able to grow. So, and I could really save on groceries and stuff like that. And it could be just a nice hobby just to get outside more often. And yeah, so that's about it. that's the show for today. I'm glad that we were able to cut it at closer to the mark. That is what I usually like to end it at, 2-hour mark. So that's good. Please subscribe to me on YouTube. YouTube.com/TheMCFaceman. Got 61 subs right now. Let's bring that number up. Okay, let's bring it up to 100. It's gonna take some time, but I'm sure within the next few months we can get up to 100. So let's try to shoot for that. And check out my videos. Give it a like. Give it a comment. Would really appreciate it. If you're on Twitch, give me a follow on Twitch. I would like to get that affiliate status. I think that would help a lot with bringing more people to the channel and checking out the Sunday show every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's where you can catch this every Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TheMCFaceman. And you can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/TheMCFaceman for updates. Have a great Sunday and a great week. Take care.